This is why maybe I should, well, just do my own looking because I found enough interesting headlines for a third news video, which is insane in my opinion because I don't remember the last time I actually did three news videos. But either way, let's get into the third news video of the day, where we now finally talk about the big signing of the big signing of the day, because last night Dragon Lee and Dralistico defeated FTR, ending FTR's year-over-year plus reign as AAA Tag Team Champions. But then right after, it was announced that Dragon Lee had officially signed with the WWE and that the AAA Tag Team titles would then be vacated. So it is interesting that AAA decided to take the belts. It kind of shows that maybe AAA were that desperate to get the belts off of FTR and get the belts back on somebody on the roster that they didn't care about instantaneously vacating them once the match was over, because that is exactly what took place. That once Dralistico and Dragon Lee won the match, the titles were then immediately vacated because of the fact that Dragon Lee said, and I quote, "I'm a WWE superstar and I will be leaving AAA to join WWE in January. NXT is where he's headed." It is interesting to me that that's the way that they went with it, but I understand if it was the case that AAA is that desperate to get the roster back at the forefront holding championships, because people like FTR and Sammy and Ty Mello, people that are not full-time AAA employees, have been holding championships for extended periods of time. And again, like I said in the last news video, that AAA's only exception would be if somebody like Kenny Omega came down and wanted and worked for AAA, that they would allow Kenny to be AAA, win the AAA title again, which Kenny is a former world champion in that promotion, holding the title when he was the belt collector, holding the AAA, AEW, and Impact Wrestling titles all at the same time. I do believe he vacated the AAA title due to injury and ended up losing the Impact and AEW title to Christian Cage and Hangman Adam Page, respectively. I was going to make this match a 2 out of 3 falls match to make sure that I had the opportunity to get through everything that I wanted to talk about. So let's continue. As it was talked about in an interview, Emma spoke about what brought her back to WWE, and when she knew, it's that when her contract with Impact Wrestling was coming up, she thought about the possibility that, well, basically, maybe I'm done with Impact. And maybe I could go back to WWE. And as she was finishing up with Impact, that is when she got the call from Triple H to come back to WWE. So it's like a matter of it working out perfectly. And Triple H even telling Emma that Emma was on his list. It was just the fact that he was excessively busy and other things, I don't want to say taking precedent, but keeping him busy, keeping him from making the call to get Emma back sooner than was expected. For those who may not be aware, Madcap Moss and Emma are actually a couple, and since Emma's return, she has done a bit with Madcap Moss and shown, well, potential that there could be something there with her and Madcap Moss. But in my opinion, it is just another way for WWE to add depth back to a depleted women's division, which is something that they needed, because one thing that happened with the budget cuts in 2020 One thing that happened with the budget cuts in 2020, sorry I was distracted, I thought I was going to get counted out, is that basically you depleted the women's division. So one of the things that Triple H put at the top of his list, and it's pretty obvious that he did, is getting the depth back in the women's division. And he's done a wonderful job of doing that, adding people like Emma, Tegan Knox, and a smattering of others back into the women's roster to reinvigorate and bring back the depth that was once there. And Triple H could still do a little bit more to add a little bit more depth back. But the fact of the matter is, he just doesn't need to do that. He also needs to allow for, well, time. Time and direction is something else that's missing within the women's roster. And that's something that I hope we can see in 2023. And maybe that the Royal Rumble can actually lend a little bit of assistance to in 2023. Dax Harwood now. Dax Harwood has been getting used to being welcomed, I guess you could say, into the podcast game as Dax Harwood took over the Gentleman Villain podcast. Now that William Regal is back in the WWE, the Gentleman Villain podcast is now FTR with Dax Harwood. So the question is, as I just whipped the dive, what did Dax Harwood talk about? Well, Dax Harwood has been telling stories about specifically the stuff that took place over the summertime at All Out and CM Punk's time in AEW. And Dax Harwood specifically mentioned the fact that he would love to see CM Punk and the Elite make good, break bread and make up, let bygones be bygones for the betterment of AEW. I don't think that's gonna happen, but I respect Dax Harwood. You know, I do respect Dax Harwood for trying to be the messenger, and I guess I guess Dax Harwood could be considered somebody that's willing to open the line of communication, or somebody who's capable of opening the line of communication between CM Punk and the Elite, because it has been highly talked about the relationship that Punk has with the Elite. I mean, with Dax and Cash Wheeler. So I respect Dax Harwood for what he was trying to do, but at the same time, I don't see it happening. Now, the discussion shifts to, of course, Dragon Lee. Again, something that I forgot and neglected to mention was that Dragon Lee is actually close friends with Andrade. So there was partial discussion of the possibility of Andrade's imminent return again to the WWE, which is something that we've heard ever since Triple H took over in WWE, the possibility of Andrade El Idolo returning to the company because of what Triple H did with him in NXT and the positive status that Andrade had on the WWE roster at the time when Triple H was in charge of NXT. But the only question is, in my opinion, what does... Well, actually, there's two questions. Question number one is, will it happen? And number two is, will Tony Khan allow him to leave? I don't think that's going to happen, but maybe it's something that could change in 2023. The fact of the matter is, though, we also now can say a WrestleMania 39 update. It is that Stone Cold Steve Austin Of the three, The Rock, John Cena, and Steve Austin, Stone Cold Steve Austin is now being called the most likely member of that trifecta to be a part of WrestleMania 39 next year. It is just a matter of what Austin will be doing, as per Dave Meltzer from the Wrestling Observer. And another thing to mention, just squeezing in two more stories, Sting's last match. Sting was very vague about his last match, but he did say two things that I find interesting. It is that Darby Allin will be a part of it, and it will not be a singles match because Sting does not feel like he's capable of having a singles match at this point in his career, which I completely agree with. But it will be interesting to see what the future holds and when the Stinger decides to call it a career. And one last note of news is that Toxic Attraction is still being talked about as possible call-ups, even with Mandy Rose being gone. The plan was, with Mandy Rose here, that Toxic Attraction would be making the move to the main roster. So with Mandy Rose gone, it is good to hear that Toxic Attraction is still possible main roster bound in 2023. With that being said, though, this is me signing off. Do not forget to ding that notification bell to always know when a new video is up on the channel, and I will see you in the next one.